I don't know. I don't trust Cardinal Radcliffe as far as I can throw him, and he looks like a frail old man, so maybe I can throw him a couple feet. I don't know.
So rather talking about the Synod is rather like talking about sex to a young kid. Sex and the Synod. It could be a new TV series.
Are they this tone deaf? That's my question. Or are they this nefarious? And that's why I wanted to bring it up, just because I think when we talk about infiltration of the church, we think about the bad guys of the church. I think sometimes we think of them as like evil Bond villains that know exactly what they're doing is evil, but they're doing it anyway.
Yeah.
That may be true for some in the church.
There might be a few, or
but I think there's a lot of people in the church who sincerely think they're doing good.
By the way, my name is Joe McClane. I host a radio program called A Catholic Take, where we look at the world through a Catholic lens. I'd love for you to hang out with us. If you like it, give it a thumbs up and let us know what you think in the comments below.
This reported by Michael Haynes over at LifeSite News. Cardinal Radcliffe, let that sink in. Root word radical. Cardinal Radcliffe says that the challenge of talking about the Synod is rather like talking about sex. Why do we feel like we're going to be banned? Is that why we changed the word S3X? Just say it. It's fine. We're adults. Sex with somebody who's just getting to puberty. It's about how you're alive in a new way. Listen to Cardinal Radcliffe say this. Let me just make sure my volume is up.
It struck me that the challenge of talking about...
Speaking of Grey Poo Paul, maybe this was the guy in the commercial. I don't know.
About the Synod is rather like that of talking about sex with somebody who's just getting to puberty. When I was a young lad at my Benedictine school, I remember an elderly monk.
Uh-oh. I thought he was a Dominican. He went to a Benedictine school? Traitor.
Took me aside to give what they used to call the jaw, all about the birds and the bees and so on. For some reason, I thought he was talking about Winston Churchill. It's true. But when the penny dropped, I thought it all sounded so ridiculous and absurd. And I think this is rather talking about the Synod is rather like talking about sex to a young kid. Sex and the Synod. It could be a new TV series.
I'm sure it is. We're waiting to get that report. I'm sure our good friend of the show, Dr. Anthony Stein, will have that report very soon. Don't worry.
Because these are things you only understand in living them. It's about how you're alive in a new way. Jesus announced the kingdom by telling parables, performing gestures, cleansing the temple, giving us his body and blood. So what can we do? How can we live? What gestures can we make so that people can have their eyes opened to the life-giving encounters which are the very heart of synodality? How can we touch the imagination of our world?
What I heard was, golly gee whiz, I don't understand why Catholics just don't get how good the Synod really is. They're not getting it. It must be that we're not communicating it well enough. We're just doing a bad job of communicating how good this is. Kind of reminds me of what we're seeing with so much pushback on auditing USAID or the Fed or the FBI, or it's like, or FEMA, for crying out loud. As we saw earlier on the show, Doge has pointed out tens of millions of dollars going to wasteful spending when they could have gone to help those who suffered in that hurricane and the subsequent mudslides and all the rest in the Carolinas. Are they this tone deaf? That's my question. Are they this tone deaf? Or are they this nefarious? Maybe it's both. Let me know what you guys think. Are the Synod fathers who sit here and time after time after time just try to tell us, listen, you guys should be on the team here. Why are you complaining so much? Why are you pushing back so much? Are they tone deaf? or nefarious or both? I want to know what you think. You let me know in the comments. I just think that they're so tone deaf. They lack. They're so secular that they just can't seem to understand why you would have any problem whatsoever with their casual, flippant embracing of perverse sexual practices in the modern culture. Why would you push back? Good grief. Like, they just don't understand it. They can't seem to wrap their heads around it. Is it because they're just boomers? You might be young now, but you won't be forever. One day you too will be old, and the next generation will call you the equivalent of the next boomer generation.
Am I so out of touch?
You're
no,
so out of
it's the
touch.
children who are wrong.
Yes. Well, so then where's the right answer?
Classic Simpsons moment.
So who's got the right answer then, right? Obviously, I think this is why we have tradition. This is why we have the apostolic tradition handed on from one generation to the next.
And the thing is, it's not necessarily a monolith. It's not one or the other. Like, I'll bet there are some. I think it's obvious that there are some people working within the church and within the church hierarchy who are outright malicious, who are outright, nefarious in their intentions and in how they deal with things.
Yeah,
I would say probably the majority are simply, they're just true believers in the new springtime of the church and all that 60s, 70s garbage, and they just can't get why people aren't on board. It's like people who can't get on board with, like, well, hasn't the last 100 years been progress and wonderful and amazing and everything's been getting better? Why aren't you on board with this? Like, they do not understand, and they are convinced that, like, everything's good and is getting better. Like, people,
Right.
There are people who are convinced that the church is in good shape and is getting better. They're in complete denial over the situation. It's the same thing. You can see a lot of this on the left in America after the election, where people are like, oh, I guess we just didn't market enough the fact that the economy is amazing and everyone's getting hired and freedom is great and everything's wonderful and all this social justice stuff is the best. They are true believers in that fact, and they just cannot believe that these dumb Americans can't see it, and some have a more charitable response of like, oh, I guess we need to market it better and be more synodal and so that people see the light. And then there are some who are like, these idiots, these rubes, these backwards traditionalists can't see how great it is. And then there are the ones who are just outright, nefarious in their goals. I'm not going to say who clearly is one or the other, but I do think the majority is just people who legitimately think, oh, this is all for the better of the church and stuff. These are people who would never willingly deny doctrine and say they're denying doctrine and say they're changing dogma. Like, they just think it's all good. It's all, this is how the church is supposed to work. This is what Jesus wanted. I think they actually are deluded enough to believe that. They will drop those words, and those themes willingly because they think that's the case. They think this is all progress.
Right.
They really do.
And that's
which is harder to argue with. It's almost harder to fight that than to just say that person's evil,
Yeah. And that's why I wanted to bring it up, just because I think when we talk about infiltration of the church and we think about the bad guys of the church, and I think sometimes we think of them as like evil Bond villains that know exactly what they're doing is evil, but they're doing it anyway.
Yeah.
That may be true for some in the church that are bad actors.
There might be a few or
but
more
I
than
think
a few.
there's a lot of people in the church who sincerely think they're doing good.
Yep.
It's like St. Paul talks about. St. Paul thought he was sincerely doing good about arresting Christians and hauling them out, which, by the way, there's some cool anecdotal stories in here about that as well. I'm rereading Eusebius because I'm getting ready to go on that pilgrimage, and I want to have some cool stories, anecdotal stories to share with our pilgrims. Me and Bishop Strickland are going to Greece and Turkey, so I'm going through it, and it's very cool to read one of the earliest church historians that is available to tap into. It's amazing. But a lot of these people they think they're sincerely doing good. I mean, you might argue that Nestorius, when he was the Archbishop of Constantinople and in the good graces of the emperor's house, when he denied Theotokos there in the 4th century and he wanted to go with Christotokos, he just thought, hey, this is a better definition, safer, and he just pushed back against what most were accepting was Theotokos. And that's, I think, an important part to remember was the majority of the church were like, no, Our Lady was Theotokos. She was God-bearer. It wasn't like a new invention at the Council of Ephesus in the 5th century. in I think it was 431, 451, maybe 451, Council of Ephesus. There's a lot of people who are sincere about what they believe. It's just that they're sincerely wrong. Can those people be saved? I think there's a chance, at maybe a far distant chance, like the odds are against it. You know, maybe it's probably likely not going to happen, but if they're sincere, I believe sincere people can be reasoned with. I think the real nefarious actors who are sold out for their evil agenda and they know they're doing harm won't be safe for sure. The question is, who's who? And therein lies the rub. I certainly can't tell the difference. Can you? I don't know. I don't trust Cardinal Radcliffe as far as I can throw him. And he looks like a frail old man, so maybe I can throw him a couple feet. I don't know. But I don't trust him that much. I can't tell necessarily if he's sincere or nefarious. I don't know. But I think our Lord will want us to give him the benefit of the doubt, to love our enemies, because that's what it means to be godlike. You know, perfect, to be perfect as God is perfect. That's what he says in the Sermon on the Mount. That's what David was like. That's why King David was named a man after God's own heart, because he could forgive even his enemies. So we must pray fast and do penance for the wolves in sheep's clothing. I think it's a teachable moment for all of us.
Did you like that video? It's okay. You can admit it. It's perfectly fine. Hey, we cover the big stories of our day, from inside the church to outside the church to all points in between, and we do it from a Catholic perspective. It's called A Catholic Take. It's a radio program Monday through Friday. We live stream it right here on this channel, by the way, so make sure to subscribe, like, and share. We would be very grateful to you. And don't forget, you're going to want to watch this video right here because you don't want to miss anything.